My brother told my parents I embezzled $11,000 from our family's restaurant. My father threatened to report me to the labor board. My mother cried and said she always knew I had a dishonest streak. What none of them knew was that I'd already spent 3 weeks quietly pulling every bank statement, every vendor invoice, and every cash register log. I didn't just have answers, I had a file, and I was saving it for Sunday dinner. I was sitting at my kitchen table on a Thursday night, still in my work clothes, when my phone lit up. It was my father. We had talked just 2 days before, normal stuff, nothing heavy, so seeing his name flash on the screen at 9 p.m. made my stomach dip. I picked up. "Dad? Is everything okay?" He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how I was. "Nina." His voice was flat in a way I hadn't heard since the year my uncle passed. "I need you to explain something to me." "Okay," I said slowly. "What's going on?" "There's money missing from the restaurant, a lot of it. $11,000, Nina. Gone from the supplier account between January and April." I blinked. I had spent the first 4 months of the year as the interim bookkeeper for my family's restaurant, while our regular accountant, a woman named Miss Cho, was out on medical leave. I had handled payroll, vendor payments, and supply orders. I knew every transaction I had made. I knew every receipt I had filed. "That's not possible," I said. "I documented everything. Every single payment has a corresponding invoice." "That's what I thought," he said. "But your brother ran the numbers tonight. He says there's a gap. He printed everything out. He's sitting right here." My brother. I closed my eyes. My brother, who had been lobbying our parents for 2 years to give him a larger ownership stake in the restaurant. My brother, who had never once thanked me for stepping in when Miss Cho got sick. My brother, who had called the restaurant his legacy in a toast at Thanksgiving, while I sat there having covered 3 months of his invoicing errors without saying a word to anyone. "Can I talk to him?" I asked. There was a shuffling sound, and then my brother's voice came on. He sounded calm, too calm, the kind of calm that people perform when they've rehearsed. "Hey, Nina, look, I don't want this to be a thing, but the numbers don't lie. There's an $11,000 discrepancy in the supplier account during the exact months you were handling the books." "Walk me through it," I said. "Which line items?" "I don't think that's the point right now," he said. "The point is, if you needed money, you could have asked. Nobody's judging you." The condescension in that sentence hit me like a slap. "If you needed money," as if the conclusion was already settled, as if I'd already confessed. "I didn't take anything," I said. My voice was steady. I was surprised by that. "Put Dad back on." My father got back on the phone. His voice had shifted. Now it was tired, disappointed in that specific way parents have when they've decided they're not angry, just sad, which is somehow worse than angry. "Nina, if there's an explanation, just give it to us. We'll work through it as a family." "I'll give you the explanation," I said. "But I want to do it in person, not over the phone. Your brother thinks we should call the labor board." I went very still. The labor board. For a filing complaint against a bookkeeper. My brother had actually said that out loud. "Don't do that," I said quietly. "Not yet. Give me until Sunday. I'll come to dinner and we can sit down together." My father was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Sunday, 7 o'clock. And Nina, bring whatever you have." "I will," I said. "I'll bring everything." After I hung up, I sat in the same chair for a long time without moving. The apartment around me was quiet. My roommate was out. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car passed. I wasn't crying. I noticed that, distantly. I expected to cry. Instead, I felt a cold, focused pressure behind my sternum, the sensation I get when a spreadsheet doesn't balance and I know the answer is in there somewhere, waiting. I had felt it before in my work as a financial analyst. I'd been chasing it my whole career. That feeling means something is wrong, and I am about to find it. I went to my desk. I need to explain something about my family and the restaurant, because without that context, none of what I'm about to tell you will make sense. My parents immigrated from South Korea in the late 1980s. They built their restaurant, a small Korean-American diner called Hana's, from nothing. My father worked every station. My mother ran the front of house. They saved every dollar and reinvested it, slowly expanding from a 12-table lunch spot into a full-service restaurant with a catering arm that now serves most of the corporate park 2 miles away. I grew up in that restaurant. I did homework at the corner booth. I learned to count change before I learned long division. When I was 16, I taught myself basic bookkeeping from a library book because my parents were paying a service they couldn't really afford, and I wanted to help. My brother is 4 years older than me. He was always the front of house personality, charming, loud, quick with a joke. My parents adored him for it. He was the one who convinced new vendors to give them extended credit terms. He was the one the regulars knew by name. He had the face of the business, and he knew it, and for a long time I was fine with that. I worked the back end. He worked the front. It was a balance. The shift happened when my brother married his wife 3 years ago. She had opinions, loud ones, about the menu, about the decor, about how the restaurant should expand. She suggested they open a second location. She suggested a rebrand. She started calling the restaurant the family business in a way that specifically did not include me. My brother started pushing for a formal ownership structure that would give him a 51% controlling stake. He'd been pitching my parents on it for months. They kept saying they needed time to think about it. I had stayed out of it deliberately. I did not want to fight over ownership. I just wanted my parents to be treated fairly. When Miss Cho went out sick in January, I offered to cover the books. My father looked relieved. My brother said, "Great, less overhead." He didn't say thank you. Over 4 months, I handled everything. Payroll for 11 employees, vendor invoices for produce, protein, dry goods and packaging, utilities and lease payments, catering deposits and reconciliations. I did it on top of my regular 40-hour week. I billed nothing, and now I was being accused of stealing from it. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the folder I kept on my desktop labeled Hana's, Jan through April. Inside were subfolders for every category, invoice copies, bank confirmation numbers, payment timestamps. I was thorough to a degree most people would call excessive, but I work in finance. Thorough is how you survive. I started by doing exactly what my brother claimed to have done. I ran the numbers. I pulled the supplier account activity and mapped every outgoing payment against the corresponding invoice. 11 payments. That was the gap my brother had cited. 11 payments totaling $11,200 that he claimed had no matching invoices. I found the invoices in under 20 minutes. They weren't missing. They were filed under a different vendor category. In February, I had reorganized the filing system because the original categories Ms. Cho used were inconsistent. She had 2 different vendors labeled under the same code, which was creating reconciliations errors. I had consolidated them and sent my father a memo explaining the change. I had the memo. I had his red receipt. So either my brother had not looked at the full folder system, or he had and chose not to mention what he found there. I sat with that thought for a moment. I didn't like where it was pointing, but I had spent years in financial analysis, and I knew that the most uncomfortable explanation is often the right one. I kept going. If my brother had been running the numbers, he must have had access to the restaurant's accounting software. He was not the bookkeeper. He had no administrative login. I knew this because I had been the one to manage the software access during those 4 months. I logged into the admin portal remotely. The access log showed 3 sessions under my brother's wife's name, who had never been given an account, on dates in March and early April. The sessions had been granted using my father's owner login. Each session had queried the supplier account specifically and exported data to a CSV file. They had been in the system. They had been looking at specific data points, and they had exported files before coming to my parents with their discovery. I felt the cold in my chest spread outward. I kept a habit from my work life of taking timestamped screenshots of anything I thought I might need later. I don't know exactly when I developed this instinct, probably during a particularly contentious audit early in my career, but it had become second nature. I screenshotted the access log. I exported it to PDF. I saved it to my hard drive, then to my cloud storage, then to a USB drive I kept in my desk drawer for exactly this kind of moment. Then I started looking at the bigger picture. My brother's wife ran a small event planning business. She had been using Hana's catering arm to fulfill some of her contracts, a legitimate arrangement that my parents had approved informally, with a discounted rate as a family benefit. I had processed several of these invoices during my time on the books and noticed that the discounts were being applied inconsistently. Some events got the family rate, some were billed at cost. I had flagged it to my father in passing, and he'd said he'd look into it. He hadn't. I pulled the catering records for the same January to April period. I compared the contracted rates on my sister-in-law's events against the payments received. The discrepancy wasn't mine, it was hers. Over 4 months, she had been underreporting the catering revenue from her events to my parents, billing the restaurant's catering service to her clients at full market rate, pocketing the difference, and submitting lower revenue figures to my father, as if the events had been priced at the family discount. It wasn't a massive sum, but it was consistent, and it was deliberate. The total gap was just over $18,400. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I looked at the $11,000 my brother had accused me of taking. I thought about the ownership conversation, the 51% stake, the push to formalize control. If I was removed from the picture, fired, disgraced, or simply discredited, my brother would become the default choice to manage the business. He'd get the control he wanted. And if my father was distracted by a family scandal, he might not look too closely at the catering revenue. I wasn't certain. I want to be clear about that. In my profession, you present what the evidence shows and you let other people draw conclusions. But the pattern was there, and I had documented it. I printed everything. The invoice reconciliation showing the files weren't missing, just reorganized. The memo I had sent my father in February explaining the filing change with the read receipt. The access log showing my sister-in-law had queried the system 3 times without authorization. The catering revenue comparison showing the $8,400 gap. I organized it into a clear folder with a cover page, the way I would for a client presentation. I labeled it with the date and the word documentation. Then I went to the bank on Friday morning and withdrew a cashier's check for $11,000 made out to Hannah's restaurant. I put it in an envelope. I was not going to offer it, but I wanted them to see that I had it, that it was real, and that I had chosen not to use it as an escape route. Sunday came. I dressed in the blazers I wear to client meetings. It is a dark charcoal gray, fitted, and it makes me feel like the version of myself who does not fold under pressure. I drove the 40 minutes to my parents' house with the documentation folder on the passenger seat and a very specific kind of calm in my chest. Not peace, exactly. More like the stillness that comes right before you say the thing you've been holding. My father's car and my brother's SUV were both in the driveway. I noticed a small detail I hadn't expected. My sister-in-law's car was there too. I had assumed it would be a family conversation. Of course she would be there. I let myself in with my key. The smell of doenjang jjigae reached me from the kitchen, which told me my mother had been cooking since the afternoon. Serious family discussions at our house have always involved serious cooking. It's the only language my mother has, for I don't know how to feel right now, but I still love you. They were in the dining room. My father at the head of the table. My mother beside him, her hands folded. My brother across from the empty chair that was clearly meant for me. His wife beside him, wearing the expression of someone who had been coached to look sympathetic. "Sit down, Nina," my father said. I sat. I placed the documentation folder on the table. I did not open it yet. "You said you'd bring whatever you had," my father said. His eyes went to the folder. "I did," I said. "But I'd like to hear the accusation first, clearly. From whoever's making it." My brother leaned forward. "I already told you on the phone. $11,000 in supplier payments that have no matching invoices. During the 4 months you ran the books, did you look at the full folder structure?" I asked. "I looked at the system," he said. "The invoices aren't there." "They are there," I said. "They're in the consolidated vendor subfolder that I created in February when I reorganized Miss Cho's filing system. I sent Dad a memo explaining the change." I looked at my father. "Do you remember that?" My father's brow furrowed. "You did send something." "I thought it was a general update, Tao." "It was a specific update about the vendor categories. It has a read receipt timestamp showing you opened it." I opened the folder and slid the first 2 pages across the table. The memo and the read receipt printout. My father picked them up. He read. The furrow deepened. This says the payments are there, he said slowly. Just categorized differently. Because I reorganized the system to fix an error, I said, which I documented and disclosed at the time. My brother shook his head. He picked up the pages his wife was already reaching for. That doesn't explain the gap. There could still be. There's no gap, I said. I've reconciled every line item. Every supplier payment from January through April has a corresponding invoice. I can walk you through each one individually if you'd like. I have all 93 of them indexed in that folder. The room was quiet for a moment. My mother had not spoken. She was looking at the pages in my father's hands. Then why did you find a discrepancy? My father asked my brother. His voice had shifted slightly. It wasn't directed at me anymore. My sister-in-law spoke up before my brother could. The system is confusing, she said. When I was pulling reports, it wasn't clear. I looked at her. You were pulling reports? She stopped. You don't have an account in the system, I said. The software access is managed through the admin portal. I set up the accounts. The only users with access are my father, Ms. Cho, and me. I paused. Unless someone used my father's login to create a session under a different name. The silence that followed was different from the silence before. It had weight in it. I was just trying to help, she said. I'm good with numbers. I thought I could. You ran 3 sessions in March and early April, I said. On March 14th, March 28th, and April 3rd. Each one queried the supplier account specifically and exported a CSV file. I slid the next page across the table, the access log with the timestamp. That's in the system log. My father looked at the page. Then he looked at his daughter-in-law. My brother put his hand on her arm. She was trying to find the discrepancy because we were worried. What were you worried about? My father asked. His voice was very quiet now. About the restaurant, my brother said. About whether the books were being handled properly. You were worried enough to access the system without telling me, my father said. Without asking Nina. And then it came to me and told me there was missing money. He set the pages down. Without mentioning that you had already been in the system. My brother started to say something. My father raised his hand, and he stopped. There's something else, I said. I didn't say it with satisfaction. I want to be clear about that. I said it because it needed to be said. I turned to the catering revenue comparison and set it on the table. From January through April, the catering arm handled 8 events contracted through my sister-in-law's business. The restaurant invoiced her at the family discount rate, which Mom and Dad approved. But the charges she billed her clients were at full market rate. I pointed to the column. The difference, the amount she collected from clients beyond what she paid the restaurant, was $8,411. The room went very still. That's a pricing difference, my sister-in-law said. Her voice had changed. It was faster now. That's just how event planning works. My markup is my business. Your markup on your own services, yes, I said. But the restaurant's services were invoiced at a rate my parents set, based on the assumption that the final pricing to your clients would be roughly the same. If you were billing clients double and pocketing the difference, that's not a markup. That's using the family discount to fund a margin that was never disclosed to anyone in this room. My mother looked at the table. She was completely still. This is insane, my brother said, standing up. His voice had a high, strained quality to it, like a cable pulled too tight. You come in here with printed paper and accusations when you're the one who was supposed to be accountable for those books. Sit down, my father said. Dad, sit down. He sat. My father picked up the catering comparison. He looked at it for a long time. He is not a man who trained as an accountant. He built a restaurant with his hands over 30 years. But he has always understood numbers the way people who grow up watching money carefully understand them, intuitively, deeply, and without sentimentality. He set the page down. Is this accurate? He asked me. I can show you the individual invoices from each event, I said. The contracts are on file. He turned to my sister-in-law. He did not raise his voice. He did not slam anything. He just looked at her. Did you know about this? He asked his son. The silence that stretched between them was its own answer. My sister-in-law started to speak. My brother cut her off with a look. There was something happening between them in that silence. a rapid, wordless renegotiation. I had seen it in business settings. Two people who had gone in together on a plan, realizing the plan was falling apart, trying to figure out who was going to take the weight of it. "We were going to use it to fund the second location," my brother finally said. His voice was different now, smaller. "We were going to put it back once we had cash flow. We thought if we could show Dad the business case first and then disclose the capital source. You were going to use my restaurant's discounted services as unauthorized seed funding," my father said, "and then tell me about it after the fact. It wasn't like that. That is exactly what you described." My mother stood up. She didn't say anything. She walked into the kitchen. A few moments later, I heard the refrigerator open and close. She came back in with a glass of water, set it in front of my father, and sat back down. She still hadn't spoken. My sister-in-law looked at me. "You don't have to do this," she said. "We're family." "I didn't start this," I said. "I know you're upset, but blowing up everything over a misunderstanding. You used my father's login to access a financial system without authorization," I said. "You pulled data. You brought my brother to my parents with a claim that I had stolen $11,000. You knew I hadn't. You knew exactly where those invoices were because you had exported the data files." I paused. "That's not a misunderstanding." My sister-in-law looked at my brother. He was staring at the table. My father pushed back his chair and stood up. He is not a tall man, but he has a way of standing that makes the room feel smaller around him. "I think you should both go home tonight," he said to my brother. "I need to talk to your mother, and I need to talk to Miss Cho tomorrow and have her review everything in that folder." He looked at the documentation. "Nina, can I keep this?" "It's yours," I said. "I have copies." My brother stood. He didn't look at me. He said something quiet to my father in Korean, something I didn't catch, and my father didn't respond. My sister-in-law picked up her purse and walked to the door without making eye contact with anyone. I heard the door close, then the sound of their car backing out of the driveway. The dining room was very quiet. The jjigae smell was still coming from the kitchen. My mother got up and went back in there. My father sat back down across from me. "I'm sorry," he said. "I had been waiting for those words since Thursday night. Now that they were here, they felt smaller than I expected. Not because he didn't mean them. He did. I could see it. But sorry is a single word, and what had happened was not a single thing." "You didn't ask me," I said. "You didn't call me and say, 'Your brother found something, can you explain it?' You said it was gone. You said he'd already decided. You told me he was talking about calling the labor board." "I know." "If I didn't have the documentation?" "I know, Nina." We sat with that for a moment. "I've always trusted your brother's read on things," my father said. "He's been more involved in the day-to-day. I've relied on him. Maybe too much." "He wants 51%, I said. My father looked at the table. "He's mentioned it." "I'm not going to fight him for ownership," I said. "That was never what I wanted. I helped with the books because you needed someone and I could do it. I've always just wanted the restaurant to be okay. I've wanted you to be okay." My father was quiet for a long moment. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. My mother was moving around in there, putting food away or keeping it warm. I couldn't tell which. "What should I do?" he asked me. It was the first time in my adult life my father had asked me that question. "Have Miss Cho do an independent review," I said. "Everything I filed is documented and clean. It will hold up. For the catering issue, that's between you and them. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your son, but I think you should know what the numbers actually say before you make any decisions about the business structure." He nodded. I pulled the envelope out of my bag and set it on the table. "I brought this to show you that I had it. That if I had wanted to just make the problem go away, I could have. I didn't take anything, but I have the money, and it never occurred to me to use it as an exit." He looked at the envelope for a long time without picking it up. "Keep it," he said. I put it back in my bag. My mother came to the doorway. She was holding a bowl of rice and looking at the floor, which is what she does when she doesn't know where to look. "You should eat," she said to me, "before you drive." I stayed for dinner. We didn't talk about my brother. We didn't talk about the documentation or the catering revenue or the labor board. My father asked about my work, my mother refilled my bowl without being asked. It was quiet in the way that things are quiet after a storm has passed, and you're still surveying the damage, but the rain has stopped. The fallout came in stages over the following weeks. Miss Cho returned from medical leave and did a full review of the books at my father's request. She confirmed everything in my documentation. In her report to my father, she noted that the filing reorganization I had done was an improvement over the prior system, and that all accounts were reconciled correctly. My father had a separate conversation with my brother. I was not there for it, and I have not asked what was said. What I know is that the ownership negotiation was tabled indefinitely, and my sister-in-law's company has not used the catering service since. My brother texted me 6 weeks after the dinner. He said he was sorry and that things had gotten out of hand and that he hoped we could move forward. He did not mention his wife. He did not acknowledge what specifically had happened. It was the kind of apology that is really a request to stop talking about it. I didn't block him. I didn't respond warmly either. I replied, "I appreciate you reaching out. Give it some time." Then I put my phone down and went back to what I was doing. He had sat in that dining room with documentation his wife had pulled from an unauthorized login and let our parents believe I was a thief. He had used the word embezzle to our father. He had said the numbers don't lie when he knew, or should have known, that he hadn't looked at the full picture. Forgiveness is not a light switch. I know that. I've watched my parents forgive each other over years for small and large things. I've seen what it actually looks like. It's slow, and it's not always comfortable, and sometimes you extend it before the other person deserves it because you need it more than they do. I'm not there yet. Maybe I will be. I don't know. What I do know is this. I spent my whole childhood being the quiet one in the corner booth, doing the homework, running the numbers, asking for nothing. I thought that was just who I was. The steady one, the responsible one, the one who holds things together without needing credit for it. What that Sunday taught me is that being the steady one doesn't protect you. Being thorough protects you. Having your documentation in order protects you. Knowing the clause in the software contract about access logs, that protects you. 3 months after the dinner, my father called me. He asked if I would be willing to help restructure the catering arm's pricing model to make sure the rates were transparent across all contracts. He said he trusted my judgment. I said yes. We met at the restaurant on a Saturday morning before it opened. He made coffee the way he's made it my whole life, too strong, in a dented aluminum pot that has outlasted 3 espresso machines. We sat at the corner booth, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be.